Hi everyone, CJ here, and today we are going to be talking about food and wine pairings, what's in your glass, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, and we're going to talk just generally about how to learn more about wine and how to expand your knowledge on the subject. Okay, so let's start with food and wine pairings. Winemaking in itself is an art form, and then you take it to a whole nother level by throwing food into the mix. Food and wine pairing truly is about personal taste. There are some rights and wrongs, but truly at the end of the day, there are no rights and wrongs. It's your preference, but there are definitely some rules that you can follow to kind of gear you in the correct direction. One, of course, is you're drinking red wine, you're drinking white wine. What am I pairing it with? Of course, the traditional answer are red wines. You pair more with some of those higher protein dishes, heavier meats maybe, whereas a white wine you're gonna pair with more low intensity meats, maybe a chicken dish, a fish dish. But beyond that, there's how you're preparing those proteins. Sometimes there's such a heavy focus on the protein, but there's the preparation point, what herbs and spices you're using. A big thing to remember is that if you have a big tannic wine, you gotta be careful about how spicy your dish is. You don't wanna have a dish that has a lot of spice elements to it because spice ignites tannins. So you're gonna basically, the term is that it makes your wine hot basically, and no one likes hot wine. So something to keep in mind is just to keep those spice levels kind of balanced. Another thing, of course, to kind of keep in mind is that there's this aspect of like cancels like. Think of some of our estate wines. Our estate Grenache has this very kind of baking spice driven flavor profile. So when you're pairing that wine with a certain dish, you're kind of keep away from the baking spices in terms of your preparation. You're gonna go for more of those dried, savory spices, maybe a pork chop dish with some of those spices instead, and they're more complementary to one another, because if you are doing too much of that like and too much comparison versus contrast, you're kind of muting some of those elements in the wine itself, and so you just have to be very careful in that balancing aspect. And that truly is what food and wine is about. It's about balance. It's about an equilibrium between what the two that you're pairing together have. In the end, typically what is in your wine glass is going to be a little more delicate than this big meal that you have prepared. So with that balance, if anything, you wanna make sure the wine has a little bit of a heightened element of the certain qualities you're looking for. So if you're pairing a dessert, let's say, with a dessert wine, you wanna make sure your wine is just a little bit sweeter than the dish. Or if you're pairing something that is a little acidic, you wanna make sure the wine is just a little more acidic than the dish you're pairing it with, so that the wine can still shine, the food does not completely take it over. But again, whatever you enjoy. I've had the craziest food pairings. I've had a hefty rosé with a big steak. I've had a Cabernet with lobster. It truly is whatever works in your preferences and whatever you enjoy eating and drinking at the end of the day. So another question we get all the time is, I'm drinking a red wine. Red wine is made from grapes. Why am I tasting blackberry? Why am I tasting red cherry? And the truth is, you're not tasting blackberry or red cherry in its literal sense. You are tasting things that trigger your brain in a certain way that remind you of these fruits that you've enjoyed since you were born, since you were a child. So there are certain compounds in wine that bring about certain elements that basically trigger your brain in that way. It almost is like triggering a memory. There is a level of smells and aromatics that you are getting from barrel aging. There is a certain char that is done to barrels a lot of the time, or a certain amount of new French oak that's used. So you're gonna get essence of coffee, chocolate, black pepper. A lot of that is coming from the barrel process and the barrel program. How that winemaker prefers to have the certain level of char within their barrels, how long they're aging the wine in barrel, how much new French oak they're using. All of that brings another level of flavor profile and aromatics to the wine and the final product. Let's talk about what is in your glass. What are you smelling? What are you tasting? People always talk about the fact, and a lot of newcomers to wine always talk about the fact that they are smelling so many different layers of fruit flavors, spices. There's just a lot going on in here. So people who are a little more familiar, maybe a little more experienced wine tasters, they know that during the winemaking process, there are so many techniques used, and there's a lot of chemistry to it. I don't think I passed chemistry. I'm not a chemist, but I really enjoy wine and discovering more. So there are a lot of compounds within wine that kind of get, they evolve and change during the fermentation process. Things like pyrazines, esters, these are all big terms, and so we kind of break it down. What does that mean, and what does it bring out in the wine? Let's start with pyrazines. Pyrazines is an example. That is a quality within wine that people say it reminds them of the smell of green bell peppers, jalapenos, this very vegetal aspect. And so basically what is happening within your brain is that the pyrazines are triggering something similar to what happens to your brain when you were smelling things like this. Things that you have smelled probably your entire life, and so it's almost triggering this memory, and so it's basically a mind trick in a weird sense. I guarantee you there is none of this in your wine glass, and if there is, you should talk to somebody. But that is kind of where a lot of these layers come from. In white wines, like a Chardonnay, esters are things that bring more of that like pineapple, crisp green apple. They kind of elevate those levels of those aspects of the wine, more floral characteristics. So there's a lot going on in here, and again, at the end of the day, most of us are not scientists, but we're all wine enthusiasts, and we all enjoy discovering more about what is in here and how you can kind of further explore and figure out what your preference and what you enjoy in all these different styles of wine. And the really easy answer is the best way to learn about wine is to enjoy it. It's to go out and experience it. Continue to expand your horizons. Try different varietals you've never tried. Go to different regions you've never been to. When you're at a wine shop, buy that wine that you've never grabbed but you've walked past a million times, and just see if you like it. And see what different qualities it has compared to maybe what you normally drink on any given day. But that truly is the best way to learn, is just to do it, try it, be out there, enjoy it with friends, talk to people. And learn and discover new things talking to people here at the Austin Hope and Toronto Tasting Cellar on a daily basis. People who have been to regions that I've never been to, people who have traveled more than I have, or tried different varietals that I've never even heard of half the time. And that is how you expand your knowledge. That is how you get from point A to point B and just continue on past that point as well. Another extremely beneficial resource when wanting to expand your wine knowledge is two very important books. We have Wine Folly, we have The Wine Bible by Karen McNeil. These are two books that just kind of take wine to a whole nother level. You kind of get to a point in your life where you think you know, and you do know, but there's more to know. And so opening a book like this and just hearing the expertise and the experience of people like this that have just really devoted their lives to this industry and this art, it will just help you continue onward within your own educational expansion. There are also a number of online resources. You can go to wineenthusiast.com. There are a multitude of articles that you can read about wine regions from all over the world, new up-and-coming wine regions, new winemaking techniques, new winemakers. All of that will play a part in your expansion of your knowledge. There are, of course, people like Konstantin Baum. You have Andre Mack and his work with Bon Appetit. There are a multitude of different certifications that you can study for and achieve in the wine industry as a wine industry professional. You have your WSET, you have your sommelier certification, you have the Master of Wine certification. Some of these, of course, take somewhat of a lifetime, not to make you nervous, but you can work your way towards it, and the whole process is a learning process. You are learning more, you are learning as the world of wine is changing, and like I mentioned earlier, there's something new popping up every single day, and so to kind of go along with that process is fun and exciting and new, and you can kind of show off some of your wine expertise if you feel like going in that certification direction. I hope you've enjoyed this today. I hope you've learned something. I hope that we can learn together, and if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe so you can continue to see future videos that we put out as we continue to discuss more about wine together. And if you have any questions you would like answered, just leave them in the comments below, and who knows, maybe you'll be in our next episode. We'll see you next time. Cheers.